Results here on Dateline. Well, tonight, some of America's most popular cars get put to the test. Midsize cars with their midsize sticker prices. One of them may be yours. And as you're about to see, which midsize car you drive can make a big difference. Here's Chief Consumer Correspondent Lee Thompson with a Dateline Consumer Alert.
Your current status is idle, armed with power off.
The year, 1995. The test, a punishing 40-mile-an-hour crash. It's been 5 years since the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety began testing cars, trucks, SUVs, and minivans.
Right at the beginning, we had a few cars doing well. We had a lot of cars doing poorly.
101 crash tests later, Institute President Brian O'Neill claims these expensive tests are making a difference. But the Institute's mission is far from over. If it can convince all car manufacturers to build better vehicles, it will reduce injuries and damage, and insurance companies will save money. Dateline's been there since the beginning for every group of tests. This round, 7 mid-sized cars with sticker prices between $18,500 and just over $23,000.
They're the popular mainstream cars of America.
Remember, all these cars meet or exceed the government's minimum safety standard by protecting belted occupants in a 30-mile-an-hour crash head-on into a flat wall. But the Institute does it differently. O'Neill says its 40-mile-an-hour test more closely resembles many real-world accidents, where cars end up hitting off-center, resulting in serious injuries or death.
We are not going to run a crash at the speeds at which people are not going to get injured. We have chosen a test speed that is demanding, but not so demanding that no one passes.
O'Neill says there are 3 keys to determining how crashworthy a car is.
First and most important is the structure. How well the occupant compartment or safety cage retains its shape. Then we look at what happens to the dummy during the crash. Does the dummy move forward, square into the airbag, and we see this from this grease paint, and then does the dummy move back nice and gently back into the seat? Finally, we look at the injury measures recorded on the dummy. Measures recorded on the head, the neck, the chest, the upper legs, lower legs, and feet.
The Institute, which is funded by hundreds of insurance companies, buys all its cars right off dealers' lots. Dateline has no say on how they're chosen, tested, or evaluated. The Institute rates them as good, acceptable, marginal, or poor. First up, a car that's been down this road before, the Subaru Legacy. The Institute rated the 95 Legacy acceptable, its second highest rating. Now, 5 years later, the newly redesigned 2000 Legacy. Can it top its 95 performance? Dummy readings show no serious injuries. Let's take another look using the Institute's slow-motion films.
You see the dummy's gone into the airbag. It's all well controlled. There's no collapse of the structure here. It holds together very well.
With noticeably improved structural design and lower injury measurements, the Legacy moves up to the Institute's very highest rating, good. The 2000 Subaru Legacy is one of the best performing cars ever tested by the Institute. One reason for that is that Subaru engineers were able to learn from the results of the old Legacy test. But the next 6 cars in this round have never been crashed by the Institute. This is their first time down the runway. Here comes the new Mazda 626. Dummy sensors confirm that while a real person would have had an injury short of a concussion, it still causes O'Neill serious concern.
You can tell by how short this pulse is that it was a pretty sharp, hard impact.
In this shot, you can see what happens to the dummy's head. The dummy goes into the airbag. On rebound, makes a contact there with the B-pillar. That's a hard contact.
O'Neill says slight buckling of the 626 structure is the problem. As a result, the Mazda gets only an acceptable. Next is the 2000 Saturn LS.
Basically, it looks as though the shape has been reasonably well maintained.
But inside, another story. Sensors show readings high enough to cause a fracture on one leg.
We are certainly getting more intrusion down in here than we'd like to see, but it's not a major amount.
So the Saturn LS also gets an acceptable. The Chevrolet Malibu. Most of the injury numbers look good, but O'Neill spots a problem.
Watch the steering column. It gets driven upwards, and that pushes the dummy's head back somewhat, and the bowing of the door also contributes to that violent dummy movement during the crash.
As violent as this crash is, airbags and seatbelts combine to prevent the dummy from recording any fatal injuries. But that dummy movement is still significant, O'Neill says, because while this size person might have fared well in this crash, a smaller or larger person might be more seriously injured. So the Chevy Malibu also falls short of the best mark. It gets an acceptable. This is the Nissan Altima.
We see significant buckling here, which has allowed the door to bow out here.
And dummy readings show the possibility of injuries to both legs.
The dummy's flailing around all over the place. The poor structure and the steering wheel being driven up contribute to that.
The Institute considers the Nissan Altima's performance below the last three cars, so it's rated only marginal. But things are about to get even worse.
Your current status is running.
You're now watching the biggest seller of the cars tested this round, the Pontiac Grand Am.
This one looks ugly.
Dummy readings show a broken right leg, and O'Neill says a weak safety cage doesn't allow the seatbelt and airbag to do their jobs.
This is another example of poor dummy movement. We see the dummy's head actually hits here, and that contact there is quite hard. So someone could easily get a significant concussion.
The serious leg and head injuries translate into the lowest possible rating for the Pontiac Grand Am, a poor. The final car this round, the Laganza, from Korean automaker Daewoo.
Doesn't look very good at all. In fact, it looks very bad. You see major problems in here. We've got major movement of the compartment.
Just getting inside for a closer look is a challenge. Once the door is removed, investigators discover both feet are trapped underneath the dashboard.
I'll see if I can get this leg out your way.
Dummy readings show a broken left leg and a possible head injury. We go back to the films to figure out what happened.
In this tight shot, we can see the real problems with the dummy movement. The steering column gets driven upwards, the dummy gets thrown backwards, it hits the windowsill here, there's contact here.
And this person certainly would not have walked away.
The person couldn't even crawl away because the person is trapped in the car because of the intrusion and the problems with the pedals.
The Institute gives the Daewoo Laganza its lowest grade, poor.
This is supposed to be the safety cage. There's not much that's safe about this particular cage.
What do you tell the manufacturer in a case like this?
The solution is relatively simple. It requires some sophisticated engineering, but basically they've got to make this part of the vehicle stronger and this part of the vehicle, the front end, softer to absorb the energy.
Daewoo declined our request for comment on the Institute's test. But in letters to Dateline, Nissan and General Motors call the test very severe, saying it is difficult for any one test to accurately reflect real-world conditions. Nissan, maker of the marginal-rated Altima, points to government reporting which shows the average number of fatal crashes involving the Altima was the lowest in its class, and that it performs better than average in mitigating injuries. General Motors, maker of the Saturn LS, Chevy Malibu, and Pontiac Grand Am, says its own internal tests are more comprehensive than the Institute's, replicating more real-world circumstances by using dummies that represent infants, children, and women. Finally, Subaru, maker of the good-rated Legacy, says the test results validate its commitment to safety.
It's like the automotive equivalent of winning an Oscar.
Carol Prince sells the Legacy at a dealership in Northern Virginia. He says safety has become the #1 priority for car buyers, who rely on both the Institute's test as well as the government's for objective information.
It's one of the few places they can go and know with some degree of authenticity and fact that they haven't been jaded nor tainted by a manufacturer. They're completely independent tests.
So after 5 years and 100 expensive wrecks, is O'Neill's program paying off?
Good performers used to be relatively rare. Now it's more and more common that the cars get a good evaluation from us.
Manufacturers are listening to you.
They're paying attention and they're redesigning their new vehicles, recognizing the importance of this test.
If you'd like to see how midsize luxury cars perform in the Insurance Institute's tests, we'll have those results on Dateline next month. You can